The piano world has a concept called economy of motion, and it refers to playing with effortlessness and ease and without any extraneous motion. Now, I've never heard trumpeters talk about this, but I think it is actually also directly applicable to trumpet and playing trumpet. So stay tuned today, and I'm going to talk about economy of motion as it pertains to trumpet playing. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about with regard to economy of motion with the trumpet is when you have mute changes. Now, let me grab a mute. I've got my facet cup mute here. Here's a good example of this piece, or of economy of motion. In the Tomasi first movement of the Tomasi trumpet concerto, you have to have your cup mute ready to go, and you have, I think it's like 2 measures to insert the cup mute. And most of the time, I see students, they come to lessons and they do this, they're playing. They get to that spot, put the trumpet down, they get a mute, then they go, stick the mute in, boom, start to play. By this time, they're already late by about 3 beats because they have missed their entrance because they weren't prepared for the mute. So a much better system is to have the mute in position so that you have economy of motion. You have to move as little as possible to get your mute in place and play. So what I do when I start the Tomasi, and this happens in some Jolivet concerto spots as well, is I stick the mute here. Then I start my piece when I'm ready to go. I play. At those measure rests where it comes up, it's like 2 measures. I don't even move the trumpet. I leave the trumpet right where it is, and I get the mute out, and I'm ready to go. And it's that simple. What that does is it allows me to save energy moving around. It allows me not to disturb my face because I'm already in place to play, and it's only like 2 measures, so why would I bother taking the mouthpiece off anyway? I don't need to do that at the start of the piece. It's not like I need the rest, and I am ready to go, and I am not rushing around trying to get the mute back in, the mouthpiece in place to play. You have enough things to worry about as it is in a piece like the Tomasi. So economy of motion is going to help you save energy and have you be a lot more accurate and consistent because you are not wasting time shifting the mouthpiece around, trying to grab mutes or whatever. Another situation where economy of motion is very critical to your performance, and a lot of people neglect this, is with your page turns. You have to figure out, how do I turn that page with a minimum of motion? First of all, because it's distracting to see someone up there going, trying to flip their page over in the middle of a performance. Audience members start to get nervous for you because they think the page is going to go flying off or your book's going to go flying off or something. And plus it makes noise, and that's distracting to the music. So figure out how to have your pages ready so that you have a minimum of page turning taking place on stage. Sometimes that means you have to copy off an extra page so that you can open up 2 pages simultaneously and have them ready to go. And then during a section of rest, you can position the next page as you need to. Sometimes that means you're playing off an iPad. So you need to write in precisely where you're going to turn your page. I write that in on my iPad. I play basically everything off the iPad now. And I write down turn page in the music. Otherwise, I'm going to forget. And then I practice turning the page at precisely those moments so that I'm used to it. It's kind of a choreography, if you will, and you've got to practice the choreography of your piece, whether that's with mute changes or turning pages. Now, another aspect that can drive non-trumpeters crazy, trumpeters tend to be very forgiving about this, is the emptying of your slides on stage during a performance. Now, we need to try to avoid this. Okay, now I'm ready to play. That's just kind of obnoxious. We have to figure out how to delicately and with finesse empty our slides on stage with a minimum of motion to save us energy and to not be distracting to the audience and without disturbing your music. So you have to practice emptying of your slides. Maybe that's just, you just kind of open up the valve and you just shake it a little bit. Or maybe you just do. And you've practiced this in your own sessions so that you know exactly what you can get away with or what you need in order to make sure there is no extra water in the trumpet while you're playing, because we don't want that type of liquid sound on stage. A nice metaphorical liquid sound, yes, but not literal. So you've got to practice the emptying of your slides to make sure you have economy of motion there, which means you're minimizing the motion and thus not distracting yourself or your audience members and not detracting from the music. Okay, another very important area of economy of motion comes with valve work. Now, if you're playing flat-fingered habitually, you are not using economy of motion. You have to work so much harder playing flat-fingered. Your technique is not nearly so good because our fingers are not geared to play like this. I mean, have you ever seen a pianist who plays like this? No, you don't. Fingers need to be curved right over the valve caps for the best, most fluid motion and the least effort involved to play. And that is going to give you a much better economy of motion right then and there. Now, yeah, you'll see lots and lots and lots of pro players who don't do that. Correct. But just because they don't do that doesn't mean you don't do that. And I know a lot of pro players who will say, yeah, do as I say, not as I do, because I have a bad habit, so don't follow me. Now, I've never done that because, first of all, I learned on piano first, and I always practiced with good form and keeping the fingers curved. Secondly, my teacher, Jimmy Burke, when I was a teenager, really stressed having very good finger technique, finger dexterity by keeping the fingers curved on the valves. Now, he had a different situation, obviously, if you watch his playing, because he was born without the use of his right arm. So he held the trumpet and did everything with the left. So his hand position looks unorthodox. But that's because there's no way for him to avoid that. He didn't have the use of his right arm. So it had to be unorthodox. He was born in an unorthodox kind of situation. But he still stressed excellent technique, and that technique comes to play and is enhanced if you have proper form on the instrument. Now, that also happens to affect your left hand. There's so many people I see who hold the trumpet and they stick their fourth finger in the valve in the ring. That's fine. Or sometimes they use their middle finger if their hands are huge. But then they stick it all the way in past the large knuckle. So they're in this position. Their fingers are wrapped really around. Now watch what happens when I try to use that third valve slide. That's as far out as I can get it if that finger is that far in. So if I want to use that slide correctly to adjust a D or a C sharp, I have to slide my hand back, get it out of there so I can stretch further and put it out as much as I need to. And if I need to play pedal left, which happens in music on a regular basis, I'm in big trouble if I'm way over there. So economy of motion dictates that you have your hand in a good left hand position as well. That fourth finger or the third finger, whichever one you're using, is not that far in. It's not as far in as the large knuckle. It's only part way in. Now I can shoot it out. Look how far I can get it out without any extra motion. Boom, out, boom. There it goes. That is also another version of economy of motion. So think about this in your own trumpet playing. How can you exercise economy of motion in all aspects? If you start practicing that, it's going to make you a more efficient player, so you're going to be exerting less effort to play, which gives you more energy. And we need a lot of energy to play this thing because it's our bodies doing the vibrating, and that takes a lot of energy. So save your energy where you can. Not only is it healthier for you, it's going to be less distracting to your audience, and it's not going to be a distractor of the musicality you're trying to produce on stage. So think about that economy of motion in trumpet playing. And if you could think of some other areas, I'm sure there are other areas where we need to exercise economy of motion. If I think of them, I'll write it down. But if you know of some, put it in the comments, because we all could use the advice.